Hello, everyone. I know that you have been inundated with information about the course and policies and an introduction and all of that, and I am not intent on overwhelming you all. But we do, because of our condensed time frame, need to go ahead and go through an introduction of the course material. The introduction to English and academic writing, and what does this mean? A distinction I do want to make is that this course is not a literature course. This is not a course that you're going to study literature and try to analyze it. This is a pragmatic, practical course when it comes to writing. You're going to learn to write for your discipline, for your major. Something that's going to be practical to you. It's going to help you in your other classes. So we're gauging this on being a practical, pragmatic writing course. So in other agendas, in other modules, you will see that I will put together an agenda to kind of keep everything together. And so for this particular class, the administrative updates and attendance you've already seen. We're going to talk a little bit about writing anxiety. Then there's the lecture itself. We will have a grammar diagnostic exam that's ungraded. It's just our chance to kind of gauge where you are in terms of grammar and mechanics. Totally ungraded. There's a small writing assignment, a paragraph writing assignment, an introduction in Flipgrid where you will tell me a little bit about yourself and introduce yourself to me and to other classmates, and finally a reading assignment for our next class. Let's talk a little bit about writing anxiety. This is something that's very palpable. It's real and it's tangible. I find that most people are inherently adverse to writing. It's something that people think that they're just automatically out of default bad at doing. It's somewhat similar. It's actually remarkably congruent with the STEM sciences, the natural sciences, and math. There's math anxiety, science anxiety, and certain people, depending if you're left brain, right brained, cognitively, you might feel like you're not good at math or science. Writing anxiety is real. And I understand if you think you're a terrible writer, you may not have had a lot of hands-on experience, but what I find is that the K-12 system does not truly, and for years, decades actually, has not adequately prepared students to write well or to think as an academic writer, to think critically so that it's reflected in their writing. And so at this point, I would normally ask you how you feel about writing. I would ask you some questions. Why do you feel this way? Are you a good writer or not? Why do you feel that way? What do you feel are the shortcomings of teaching academic writing in our K-12 system? What are the shortcomings? Why do you think they're there? How much hands-on experience have you had with academic writing thus far? How many professors or high school teachers or previous college teachers maybe have sat down with you to look at your writing and kind of analyze some of the trends in your writing or some of the common mistakes in your writing? Why is academic writing one of the most important aspects of your time in university? Finally, how are academic writing and critical thinking related? Normally, I would ask these questions, and I would ask you. I normally do an exercise in class where we would create a word map. I'll see if I can, if this links it. It's not gonna let me link it. It creates an active word map where as you enter the answers to these questions, they populate on the screen and we can see a collection of words of how you feel about academic writing. And by and large, most people have not had one-on-one experience examining your writing style, the errors you commonly commit and why, and ways to improve that. And it's not your fault. It's no one's fault. We all come from so many different various backgrounds. We have international students. We have students that went to charter schools. We have students who were homeschooled. We have students who, it runs the gamut. Everyone comes from a different background. And that's the purpose of this class, is to bridge the gap and to set the expectation for it. This is college level writing. This is what you need to do to get there. And so these are some common questions I just want you to think about. And if you feel like you're not a strong writer, that's not a bad thing. There is so much opportunity for growth, and that's what we're here for. We're here to implement that growth, and I'm here to show you strategies to make that happen. But we need to realize and contemplate some of the shortcomings of writing where we may be, where we may lack certain writing competencies, what we're not so good at when it comes to writing, and specifically thinking about academic writing. This is not writing a letter. This is not writing an email. This is writing objective, academic, elevated, slightly complex, multifaceted type of writing. And we'll discuss what that means. In order to understand academic writing, we have to look at academic writing as a form of communication. Where does academic writing fall in the scheme of communication? The implications or results or effects regarding the inherent nature of academic writing is a defined linear process, yet fluid and still open to change. The who, what, and why of academic writing in academia and higher education and academic discussion and discourse. To understand these questions, we have to understand context and we have to explore the implications. So what I'm saying in this is that we have to start looking at academic writing as a method or a venue of communication. We are writing to impart and to deliver a message to a recipient, right? So let's first look at communication. Let's understand communication from a macro or a bird's eye view. Let's understand communication, and then let's start integrating academic writing into communication or into the communication model to better understand what we need to do or what we need to be prepared to do as an academic writer. So what is communication? Communication is the transactional process of exchanging verbal and nonverbal cues in pursuit of shared meaning. Let me go back to that. What does that mean? The transactional. Transactional is cyclical. It means there is a back and a forth. There needs to be two parties involved. There needs to be something that is being exchanged between the two parties. It's a process, which means there are steps. There are steps and elements and parts to that process of exchanging back and forth, verbal, spoken, and nonverbal, written, or paralanguage, facial expressions, body language, cues, in pursuit of shared meaning. So what this is saying is it's a back and forth. It's a cyclical process of working back and forth between the sender and the recipient in pursuit of sending information until shared meaning occurs. So whether this is in written form, whether this is facial expression, whether this is spoken word, it follows the same process of back and forth, a circle, if you will. You can envision this as a circle. It's going to continue back and forth until shared meaning occurs, at which point communication is no longer necessary because you both understand the meaning behind the communication. And this is really important because we can start breaking down what that means, how writing fits into that process. So let's look at some elements of communication first. Clearly, you have a sender. You have an origin of your message, someone who's sending it. There's a process that we call encoding. And this is what we do as writers or any person who is sending a communication to another person. You, in your mind, think of the best way to transform your thoughts of the intended information to be conveyed into a form that can be sent and best understood by the recipient. So this is where we are thinking and we're trying to program our information either into a paper, into a message, into some kind of channel of communication that can be best understood by the recipient or the audience. The channel is the manner in which the message is sent. So for us, this is going to be academic writing, right? This can also be text message, video, your body language, a smile, for instance. If it is going to encode a certain message or program it and send it to the recipient or the recipient party, whatever method in which that is sent will be, your channel. Just like we have encoding, where the sender of the message must think of the best way to transmit that message, the recipient on the other end is going to be tasked with decoding or breaking that message down in a way that they best understand or they best comprehend or understand the message. And so the sender encodes the message, programs it, sends it in a channel that they think intuitively may be best understood by the audience. The audience decodes it and, based on their own experience, breaks that message down into the best way they know, based on their experience, can be comprehended or understood. The recipient clearly is the audience. Finally, there is feedback. Because this is transactional, it's back and forth, and it keeps going perpetually until we reach shared understanding. It stands to reason that if a sender sends a message, that a recipient is also going to respond to that in some way. That response is feedback. That's the recipient understanding, accepting, or communicating any misunderstanding or understanding or feelings with regards to that communication back to the sender to let them know either A, they're confirming receipt, they're confirming they understand, or they're going to show that they don't understand the process, right? That's feedback. And I'm going to show you a model that really hashes this out and shows you in a visual manner what that means. There's also context. These are all of the internal and external factors that affect the transmission of a message from the sender to the recipient. What are any factors that can inhibit a successful transmission of a message? What can stop a message from being truly understood from the sender to the recipient? What are those factors? Is that timing? Is that political affiliation, zealous political affiliation? It can be a number of things that can stop a message from truly being understood. And we'll talk about that more in detail. Static. Any interference with the successful transmission of a message from a sender to a recipient. So where context would be any type of internal or external factor that would affect a transmission of a message, whether positive or negative. For instance, there may be some positive factors that would increase chances that a message may be better understood. There will probably also be equally some negative implications or negative factors that may mitigate a message from being understood or stop a message from being understood. Static would be those negative things, any of those things that stop a message from being well understood between the sender and the recipient. Here is a rather smug image of the process, but I think it's a very good model in terms of its cyclical or circular nature. This is the communication process. Notice it's a circle. You can't really see it on your screen. It's a circle. You have a sender or your source. You have your receiver. The sender must encode the message, mentally prepare and package the message in the best way possible based on the audience that it can be understood. It's then packaged into a channel. For academic writing, that would be documents, right? But this could be facial, paralanguage, body language, spoken word. The recipient then decodes or breaks down that information based on their own life experience in the best way they know how to understand it. If they understand it or don't understand it, they're going to send feedback back to the sender. The cycle is going to continue. The sender will then find another way to encode, another way to channel, another way to send that message over to the recipient until shared meaning occurs. That's the nature of feedback.